That thing. So I don't have my speaker, sorry, it's dead. So that means you're gonna have to listen, Evan. Number 250 is Callitropis nootkatensis Pendula Aurea. Let me talk a little bit about what's happened to Callitropis. Callitropis, when I was a student, was Callitropis. It then changed to Falsecypress a number of years ago, maybe 5 years back, and it has now since changed to Callitropis nootkatensis Pendula, or Callitropis, I should say. If you look it up in DUR, you won't find it under Callitropis. I don't know why. DUR refuses to acknowledge that. So he's got it a brief blurb under Callitropis, unless I'm wrong. I looked through the quickly this weekend. So we are learning it as Callitropis nootkatensis Pendula. This one happens to be Pendula Aurea. Pendula is exactly the same, so I'm requiring you, even though we haven't seen it, to be able to identify the two of them. The only difference is this one is Aurea is gold, Pendula is not. It's just a rich, dark, deep green. There's, excuse me, a couple of great pictures on the internet, on the website Canada Plants, of the straight species Pendula up at Western. That tree, though, is no longer there. They cut it down to put up some medical building. Criminal. It's a beautiful specimen, but they're very, very common. So Callitropis nootkatensis Pendula, very, very common plant. You'll see it frequently available in garden centers and commonly seen in landscapes because of this weeping form to it and a blue-gray tinge. Pendula Aurea is somewhat rarer. I had never really paid much attention to it until Jack actually gave us this tree. This came from Jack's property when he sold his nursery business, and we moved it in with in a wire basket. He had given me one a number of years ago, which I have in my own garden, which never went gold. And the reason I believe it's never gone as gold as this, and that's not gold, it's just slightly gold, it's because mine is growing in the shade of my neighbor's Picea abies, and I don't think it has, well, yeah, but the Picea abies is like this big around. So I think the Callitropis will be going. So it will fade, and that's true with most variegated plants. If you place them in shady situations, you'll lose a lot of the color on them. So the main characteristics of Callitropis nootkatensis Pendula, and Aurea is exactly the same except it's gold, is the broad weeping forms. If you look at the strobel eye on the edge of the branches, if you look up here, these are we're releasing the pollen in the spring. When you touch this tree in the spring, you'll have clouds and clouds of pollen. There is a word for pollination by wind. There is a word. Yeah, there is a technical word for pollination by wind. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. Learn it. It could come up on the test as a definition. Okay? So it typically has this broad weeping form. It has the strobili right on the ends here, clustered. And they will release clouds of yellow pollen in the spring. You come up and touch this and you just get covered in the foliage. Very soft textured. You'll see that scaled leaves. If you turn the leaves over, they got kind of a bluish tinge on the back with a slight marking of the scale. The bark on young trees, and this is still a fairly young tree, is fairly smooth. It will get slightly platy with age. They can be quite variable in their shape, and it's again how they're propagated from where the clonal stalk was propagated. We talked about this with Quercus robur fastigiata, and we talked about the variability in different samples. There is quite a bit of variability with these two. I was designing a residence up in Thorndale, quite a place, and long broad house built into the side of a hill. I wanted one of these, but I wanted a very, very narrow form. And we eventually found one up in Burlington that was incredibly narrow. And the homeowner looked at me like I was off my rocker because we were sourcing this tree and hadn't found one. We had all the landscaping in, but we didn't have this tree in. I eventually found one, and then they understood why I wanted a narrow formed one. They loved the tree, and that's why they wanted one. So, but I wanted a narrow formed one because it worked better with the landscape. But the point being is there's quite a bit of variation depending on where the stock is collected from and how it is propagated. Relatively pest and disease free. I haven't seen any problems on any of the ones. Probably the biggest concern, if you go much further north, is a bit of winter burn. They will get quite a bit of dead inside. You can see there's some in here. As they get thicker, they'll get quite a bit of dead in there. That's natural. If you work in a garden center, you're going to have some old lady come up to you or some old man come up to you and say, well, you know, my cedars are going brown inside. Well, don't stick your nose in the inside of the plant, right? That's natural. That's going to happen, right? I don't know what people expect. They expect their plants to be perfect all the time. But you know the reason for that, right? Right, and they're shaded, right? So they're no longer photosynthetically viable. The only exception to that rule is when you get older, you know, you become less viable as me, right? I've become much more vigorous, smarter than you guys.